Okay, it is Earth Hour. Everybody's supposed to shut their power off. And here we go. That's it. My condo is totally depowered. But luckily, got this nice DeWalt fluorescent, which I always keep charged. Sure gets quiet when it's a power outage situation. Okay, the first thing I would do in a power outage is I would check my cell phone. And the cell phone comes on, so whew, that means it's not an EMP. Second thing I would do is go out to my bug out vehicle. Where I keep my bug out bag. I would grab my Princeton Tech headlight and put it on. This thing is pretty cool. It's got several different settings, and this is the lowest setting right here. And it sort of is a floodlight, but it's also got a spotlight, which is like super bright. Check that out. That's pretty intense. But that sort of drains the battery, so minimum, oops, that's the strobe. There you go, minimum. So in a situation where the power goes out, you might be tempted to do things like burn candles or run a fluorescent, not a fluorescent, but a couple of oil lamps, which I intend to do. But one of the things that will happen when you have when you're burning fuels inside is that you will start sort of building up carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide in your home. And even if it's like not really cold, one way to take care of that and get good air circulation is to basically start a small fire in your fireplace if you happen to have one, and that will draw the air inside the residence and pump it right out the roof. So that's what I'm going to do next. Of course, if the EMP if it was an actual EMP that occurred, I would be in really bad shape right now, because you can probably see on the ground right here in my condo, that is a fuel pump to a Cummins B-Series engine, which is in my bug out vehicle. And it's all EMP proof and everything, but it doesn't do me a darn bit of good with the pump sitting there on the floor. I just had it rebuilt. But now all I need to do is put it in. It would take me about 4.5 to 5 hours to put everything back together again to the point where it's movable. Then I could load up all my stuff and bug out if I had to. But I really need to take care of that. So I guess my next step is to rearrange the furniture a bit and start a small fire and light up the oil lamps. Man, those oil lamps just stank up the place a little bit too much. And I don't want to spook the person above me in the next condo, so I just decided to rely on my DeWalt hand light, my drop light, for my primary light source, and while I put this fire together. Since I live in a condo, I can't really store a lot of really what they call real natural wood. So I rely on these pressed logs here because basically you basically don't want a lot of things with bugs in them inside a sort of a cityfied place like this. You don't want like to risk termites or anything like that. So, and you're not supposed to use actual like Duraflame logs in the fireplaces inside a condo complex like this because of all the buildup of things on the in the chimney. So we're supposed to use these pressed sawdust logs, and this thing here isn't really a thing that's designed to heat your place. It's oh, I saw this one at Survival Summary, and I thought it was pretty cool, so I bought one. Anyway, this is it has like a standard little cigarette lighter in it. Pretty cool, I must say. And of course, whenever I run a fire, I always make sure my fire extinguisher is in good shape and keep it handy. Does seem to be drawing well. One of the cool things about this these sawdust logs, is they don't tend to pop, so you don't get a lot of sparks. Well, now I've got both a little bit of heat, and radiant heat that is, and ventilation in my condo, because it pulls a lot of air from the inside of the condo, and then it basically sends it shooting up the chimney. So it has a tendency to keep the condo well ventilated, and basically, but it doesn't do much heating, except like when you're close to it, like I am. Being a city guy, I don't start a lot of fires. So my first attempt failed. All of that lath, basically, lath is like stuff they used to build walls with before they had drywall. But anyway, it burned down, and then my logs here wouldn't burn. So basically you have to chop these logs into little pieces with a hatchet, and then you can, that's sort of the intermediary between the fire, between the kindling and the actual logs burning as logs. And the trick is apparently to sort of enclose the fire with fuel so that you get a really hot area, and then the whole thing sort of takes off. And that seems to be what I'm doing here on my second attempt. So far, so good. Okay. If this were an actual power outage, one of the first things I would probably do is, because if the power goes out in this condo and it's kind of chilly outside, first thing I would do is, of course, start a fire. And I've got quite a bit of these logs stored up. I made some shelves out of them using these as sort of this and these stacked logs like this and plywood for some of my preps in my storeroom over there. Well, anyway, good. Fire seems to be taking off. But anyway, the second thing I would do is I would clear a spot, and pull my my homemade power supply out. This thing is an off-the-shelf power inverter backup system, and then I added these this second tray of batteries on top of it, and I got the charger, and I put in a power strip and all that good stuff. Now, thing is, with these things, you really don't know if they work until you try them. And I seem to remember plugging it in for like 6 or 7 minutes in January, because, you know, I like to check that sort of thing, you know, when the new year rolls around. Well, anyway, I haven't messed with it since then. So let's see if we've got power here. Okay, battery status. Uh-oh. It looks like it's only about maybe 2/3 to a half full. Well, let's see if we got enough to run a lamp here. Plug my power strip in and get a lamp. Let's see. This thing has compact fluorescence, but I mean, I've got a lamp with LEDs, and in an actual power outage situation, in fact, let's actually simulate the power outage and go get that lamp. Part of why I purchased this this first one here, this LED, pulls almost no amperage, and I've had it for about 5 years now. Yeah, there we go. So we have got light. Dun-da-da. Aim it strategically around the condo here. Cool. And these here are more expensive, newer LEDs. Actually, they were about the same price as that one, but basically they do the trick. That's my normal lighting in my bedroom, but they pull very little amperage, like maybe 5 or 6 watts on the big ones, and like maybe 1 watt for the smaller one down there. So we've got power, and we've got fire. No point in wasting my DeWalt now. Cool. Well, a little bit of civilization. And we've got another half hour till the power comes back on. Now, the reason why, I'm not sure if I really discussed the reason why I'm doing this. And that's because, and the reason why is because this Earth Hour thing is for like people who are into like serious environmentalism, and they believe in global warming, and they think that if you turn your car on, you're killing polar bears and stuff like that. And what I think is global warming is this big dodge by corporate America and the world corporations to basically make it. It's sort of like a diversion. That's what it kind of looks like, because they've got there's a lot of pollution being generated by industry even now in the U.S. and a boatload more in China, of course. And they basically, and I think the whole global warming thing is just a way for the big corporations to pretend that that the citizenry is responsible for what they're doing. So basically, however, I'm sort of co-opting the this whole Earth Day, Earth Hour thing to basically sort of emphasize that in the future, as things continue to degrade, we are in the decline of an empire, by the way, just in case nobody's figured that out yet. But basically, the infrastructure, it's a good idea to plan for certain pieces of the infrastructure to become less dependable. Now, here, where I live, it's sort of an urban environment, and there's a lot of emphasis on keeping the power going and the lights on and whatnot. So I haven't had but like one really quick power outage really since I've been a prepper, since I started prepping back in 2007, late 2006, early 7. So basically, haven't really had a chance to practice this stuff. So that's what I'm doing right now. Sort of hijacking Earth Day for my own views, my own sort of prepper mentality. So, yeah, that's about it. Well, isn't this nice? Oh, man. My first apartment, actually, I bought this condo, and it's just a condo complex that's directly across the street from my old apartment house. And man, during an ice storm we had back in like 1995, I think, the whole place froze and the power went out, and there was my antenna on my car had like a half inch of ice built up on it. It looked like a giant ice stalagmite. And I had to like carefully chip it off and then unscrew the antenna, because I knew that if I drove, that thing would just break right off or bend or something. And people were getting killed because of iced up branches falling out of their trees and they just happened to be at the wrong place in the wrong time, and all that. So basically, if you're in an urban environment and you're hunting for apartments, or you're looking for a condo, if you want to start with a condo instead of a house, I would highly recommend having some kind of method so that you can do some independent heating of your place. Because when I went through that ice storm in 1995, I became a refugee. That was before I was a prepper. I didn't have anything, really. I ended up going to the store and buying some cooking oil because of all the candles and everything were immediately gone. And I made myself some little lamps out of cooking oil. And man, they stank, but they provided a little bit of light. And I had a little flashlight. I was lucky to have one flashlight, and a lot of people, they didn't even have that. What I had was two little flashlights sort of wired to a ball cap with the bill cut off. It's sort of the precursor of these awesome headlamps that we have here with LED technology. But I was like lighting the way for a lot of people who could not find their they couldn't find their way around the apartment house in the dark. So basically, if you live in an apartment, or if you're planning on getting an apartment, I would search as hard as you can and try to find an apartment that at least has a fireplace or something that you can use to provide a little bit of independent heating. That can make the difference between your becoming a refugee and actually just being able to get by in your own home. Now, when that happened, I was lucky. I had some friends, and And I went and stayed with them. I grabbed my sleeping bag and a few blankets, and I went over there and crashed at their place. Whew. Luckily, the next morning the power came back on. But but basically, it was kind of an ordeal. You know, another thing I highly recommend is, I mean, it's plenty warm in here right now because of the fireplace and all that. But I think these Buddy heaters are just awesome. I'm not sure who recommended this. It might have been Beast down in Oregon. I can't remember the numbers. But anyway, you just hold it down, this little thing, and then when enough gas gets in there, you can hit the sparker again, and then you can release it, and you've got your pilot light going. And then you can flip it over to the first level. It's like a high and a low speed. And then this little catalytic ceramic heater element turns the propane into heat at extremely efficiently, and you hardly even smell anything. The only thing you can smell is like the moisture from the propane, because a lot of water vapor is also released, and you can smell that, but it doesn't really stink. These two oil lamps that I have here, they smell a good deal worse than this big high wattage heater that I've got going here. Amazing what technology can do. So these things are pretty cool. I highly recommend them. If you live in an apartment and you don't have any independent method of heating, I mean, if you don't feel like moving to a place with a fireplace, getting one of these things, or two of them, and a stack of propane bottles could make the difference between your becoming a refugee or your being able to get by okay enough in your own home. And then, of course, some means of cooking. Having some means of cooking or heating up anything like canned soup or making rice or whatever, having some method of cooking in your own home is the way to go, because that will prevent you from becoming a refugee again and wandering around town trying to find something to eat, you know, like maybe hunting for a restaurant that might be open. During a big snowstorm a few years ago, like maybe back around the year 2000, I think, there was this big winter storm that took out the power, and I didn't lose power here, but power was lost all over the place, and the majority of gas stations had lost their power, and they couldn't pump their gas. And some friends of mine actually ran out of gas and couldn't, while looking for gas, and they ended up having to slog home in about 1.5 feet of snow, and they managed to get home okay, but it took them a week after the storm and everything, for them to be able to recover their car, get some gas in it, and top it off, and then put it back into service. So that's why, as a matter of course, whenever I drive any vehicle, I always, if it gets down to 1/2 tank, I always top that puppy back up again. At 1/2 tank, it's empty for me. Unless, of course, I'm on a long trip or something and just coming back. So, basically, it's a good idea to have a way to cook, a way to heat, some food and water, obviously, and enough backup fuel to remain comfortable during the duration of whatever emergency you're planning for. Generally, power outages don't last more than a couple days, so you could probably plan on that, at least to start with. And yeah, that would be the way to go. Well, that's about it. Yep, thought I'd do the Earth Day thing and or Earth Hour thing and shut off the all of the power in the place. Shut off my inverter except for the little power strip light that you can see there. But anyway, if this were an actual situation where it was a more extended power outage, like it lasted all night or something, I would probably grab one of my tents and put it up inside the condo, assuming it was cold. I mean, if it was like winter time, that's probably what I would do. And then basically mostly zip it, and that would provide, it would catch a lot of my body heat, and I would be able to just sleep in there, and it would be fairly warm. And then I could, of course, face the open part of the tent toward the fireplace and get a little bit of radiant heat into the tent that way. I could probably be fairly comfortable even in freezing temperatures if the power went out. So that's what I would probably do. But if it's just like it is right now, it's like 55 degrees out, it's pretty warm. I really don't need much. I could just put a coat on or some long underwear, and I'd be fairly comfortable in that weather. And then, of course, if it's 55 degrees outside, even if there's no power in a condo like this, it's still shelter, and it's still fairly warm in here. I mean, it captures a lot of your body heat and reflects it back at you. Kind of like the same way this fire does it. You know, you can basically, the fire occurs in a fire like this, mostly in places where one hot surface is facing another, and then of course the hot gases rise up and bring the heat to any fuel that's above the coals. And then basically, but if you don't have enough hot surfaces facing each other, that won't keep the wood hot enough to actually do the off-gassing. And the off-gassing, what you're seeing right here is the gas that comes out of the wood, and that's actually what does the burning. So, yeah. So anyway, that's what I would do. I would put a tent up if it was like freezing inside the condo here, and then just get by that way. And of course I've got water and everything here. If the water stopped, it wouldn't be hard at all to grab those jugs that I have and set them up on the sink, and then you've got basically the equivalent of a sink. Yeah, nice to be prepped. Oftentimes when you run into a utility failure, you can have all kinds of things occurring, like the water purification systems in whatever municipality you live in might fail. But the thing is, if you have a water filtration system set up that you use all the time anyway, they can have all kinds of nasty things in the city water, like E. coli or things that get in there, and basically I wouldn't even know it because my system filters all that stuff out anyway, including all the industrial toxins they put in it, as a matter of course, which is of course fluoride and chlorine, which I'm not really against chlorine because that keeps the bacteria and the Legionella bacteria down. So basically I'm not against that, but fluoride, that has no business being in our water. And if you're smart, you're going to take steps to filter that stuff out. Well, that's it. That's the end of Earth Hour. Wonder how many people are doing it. I'm probably the only one. Yeah, there are quite a few lights on out there. Yeah, I'll turn the power back on and then plug that charger back in. And here we go. Back to the 20th century. Oh, the 21st. Ta-da! And time to recharge this puppy. You know, this thing is, I've used it camping quite a few times. Oh, my dishwasher started back up again. I was wondering what that noise was. Oh, well, that's the end of Earth Hour. Later, guys. Well, I was just editing that video together, and I did a little math and found that I have enough of those little pressed wood logs to last 3.75 days if I ran a fire constantly in that fireplace of that size. So basically, well, actually it's still going. It's not much of a fire, it's kind of small, but that's probably adequate. So let's see, yeah, 2.5 hours, and now anything over that is a bonus. So if at that rate, if 2 of those logs runs that fireplace for 2.5 hours, that means that I have enough for 3.75 days and a little bit of change. Not too bad for a condo, I guess. The vast majority of apartments and condos in the Seattle area would be cold and dark if we had an extended power outage. And but for the better part of a week, because I probably wouldn't burn it all the time, I would probably be okay. Actually, if we had an extended power outage, I would dig that little wood stove out of the storeroom and set that bastard up right here, and run a small fire in that puppy, and I bet you that would be a good deal more efficient. I don't know if it would burn longer, but it would certainly provide more heat to the condo than the fireplace alone. It would basically move part of the fire out into the room here, and then all the radiant heat from that wood stove would be in here, and then of course the rest of it would of course shoot up the chimney, but it would be better. And of course you can cook on that thing too, so that would be an added bonus. So yeah, 3.75 days. Not too bad for a condo. I mean, sure, I could do a lot better if I had a house, and I'm working on that. But for the time being, I have the better part of a week of independent heating. But that's just the fireplace. Then I also have quite a stack of propane that would run that little buddy heater that we've got here. And basically that would really take the chill off this place too. In fact, during the winter I just use that thing just as quick heat, because I don't bother heating the condo out here. Generally I just heat the master bedroom. What's the point of heating a room that I'm not in? So basically I just when I get up and it's time to fix breakfast and all that, and make coffee, oftentimes I just pull that little heater out and fire it up, and while I'm in the kitchen, and then shut it off and go back to the master bedroom to drink my coffee and start my day. So, and I have quite a few of those propane bottles as well, so that would be useful for cooking as well as portable heat. So I'm not too badly prepped for an apartment dweller. Well, I guess that's about it. Later.